Welcome to the Magic of Maths with me, Mr Numbervator. Now, I'm thinking that when some of you hear the word fractions, does it scare you? Do you get worried about fractions? Never again will you have to worry about fractions once I show you how easy fractions can be to learn. And I'm going to be showing you about fractions by making it very visual, very interactive, but it's going to be a lot of fun. On the table, I have got 4 rectangles and they are all exactly the same size. I want to prove to you that they are all exactly the same size because this is an important part of learning about fractions. So these rectangles, they are all exactly the same size. They are all exactly the same length. Now, let's look at this first one here. I've got my rectangle. Now, on my rectangle, I have divided my rectangle into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I have divided my rectangle into 10 equal smaller pieces. Now, I have coloured in 1, 2, 3, 4 out of my 10 equal pieces. So as a fraction, all that I have made is 4 out of 10 pieces. That is a fraction. Now, you've been taught already that the number at the top is what we call the numerator, and the number below the division line is the denominator. So this is the total number of pieces that I divided my rectangle up into, and this is the total number of pieces that I shaded in. So on my rectangle here, this rectangle shows the fraction 4/10 because I have shaded in 4 out of 10 pieces. That was easy, wasn't it? That's what I mean by the magic of maths. It is easy. Let's look at this next one. Can you help me? How many equal pieces have I divided this rectangle up into? Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have divided this rectangle into 5 equal pieces, and I have shaded in 2 of my 5 pieces. So that means I have got the fraction 2/5. I have got 5 equal pieces and I've coloured in 2 of them. Now, something interesting has happened this morning. If you look at these 2 rectangles and remember what I said, they are exactly the same size. Can you see that I have coloured in the same amount on both of these rectangles? This stops here and this one stops here. I've coloured in the same amount. So this is telling me that these 2 fractions are equivalent. They look different, but they mean exactly the same thing. And on the whiteboard here, let me show you what we can do to prove that. To get from 2 to 4, I'm going to multiply by 2. And the rule that we have in maths is whatever we do to the top, we do exactly the same to the bottom. Whatever we do to the numerator, we must do the same to the denominator. So if we've multiplied this numerator by 2 to make 4, we also have to multiply this denominator by 2. And what do we get? We get 10. So this is telling me that 2/5 is equivalent to 4/10. And visually, you can see that because on my two rectangles, and remember, they are exactly the same size. We proved that at the beginning. We have colored in, we have shaded the same amount on both of these rectangles. And if I put one on top of the other, you can see that that is exactly what equivalent fractions are. Let's look at these next two fractions. I have got how many equal pieces? 1, 2, 3, 4. And how many of those 4 equal pieces have I shaded in? I've shaded in 2. So I have shaded 2 out of 4 pieces. My numerator is 2. I've got my dividing line and I've got my denominator, which is 4. Something interesting has happened again this morning, children, because if you look at this rectangle, I have shaded in exactly half of my rectangle. If I fold this in half like this, you can see that I have shaded exactly half of my rectangle. Let's look at the board here to prove it. Whatever we do to the numerator, we must do exactly the same thing to the denominator. And I mentioned the fraction 1/2, and I am going to write that fraction 1/2. How do we get from 2 to 1? 2 divided by 2 is 1. And whatever we do to the numerator, we must do exactly the same thing to the denominator. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So what I have done to this fraction is I have simplified the fraction. You're not scared of maths anymore. You're not scared of fractions anymore. And these are two important words that we use when it comes to fractions: equivalent fractions and simplifying fractions. Let's look at my final card here. I have got 3 equal pieces and I have shaded in one of those 3 equal pieces. So my fraction looks like this: 1/3. My numerator is 1 and my denominator is 3. 1 out of 3. Now, I know some of you are thinking, what can I teach you next? I'm going to teach you something that is really amazing and you're going to love it. And I did say at the beginning, fractions is easy and fractions is fun. I want to put these 4 fractions in order of size. And it's going to be so easy because at the beginning I explained to you that each of my 4 blue rectangles, they are all exactly the same size. So let's see which of these fractions is the smallest. I think it could be 1/3, but I don't know. I'm going to put these in order on the table like this. And then all we're going to do is compare them. So, which of my blue rectangles has got the smallest amount of color on it? Which of my 4 blue rectangles has got the least amount of color? Is it this one? Is it this one? Is it this one? Or is it this one? Let's have a look. Well, this one here stops at this point here. And if I trace my finger all the way down, all of the other colors, they go past this yellow one. So 1/3 is the smallest fraction. Let's look at the next biggest fraction. We have got 4/10 and we've got 2/5. And as we know, these two fractions are equivalent. Let's see where these two fractions stop. Oh, and look at that. So that means that these two fractions are the next biggest, and this orange one here, it goes along the blue rectangle the furthest. So we have got the smallest fraction, the next two biggest fractions which are equivalent, and then we've got the biggest fraction. And that is what we call ordering fractions. But I have just taught it to you in a very visual and fun way. I'm going to write them on the board just to make sure that you can remember. 1/3 is the smallest fraction. We've then got two equivalent fractions of 4/10, and you've got 2/5, and then we've got the biggest fraction, which is 2/4, which is the same as a half. 1/3, 4/10, 2/5, and 2/4, which is the same as a half. Well done.